Yep. Inside, I want to kill myself. We are on an 0-7 run over the last 2 days. After tonight was just complete bullshit. So that's how I'm going to start off this show. Horrible Sunday, 1-5. I don't even know what to tell you about that. I just don't want to do this anymore. I have never seen anything like this, man. With the slump continuing, 2 straight losses, not a good day at all. 0-4. I just have not had a good season, man. What can this slump that I'm on? The slump continues. I've reached a new peak, actually. With I'm gonna burn my Bruins hat, man. I don't know what is going on with the Bruins. March 8th, is that what it is? I don't even know. It's March 9th, I think. Who even knows, man? I don't know what day it is anymore. I don't even know what day it is anymore, man. Back with you after the worst day that I could possibly have. Back with you, as I always am. Until I die, at least. 0-2 yesterday, and yesterday did not go well for me. 0-5. The worst month that I've ever had in my 18 years doing this. I don't know what to even tell you about this anymore. Broke the slump yesterday as the slump discontinues. The slump continues. Somebody fucking kill me, please. I don't even know what I should do at this point other than potentially end it all. What's up, everybody? It's Toad back with you. Better Off Dead. Thursday, November 6th. I'm a little bit early today. I woke up early. I'm like, whatever. I'll just figure out what I want to do today. We'll get the show going. You can't even see my eyes because of this hat, so that's awesome. Hopefully my voice sounds all right here. I mean, other than the fact that my voice is completely dead, as always. Good day on the show yesterday. Mr. Pinsey, thank you, sir. Yes, yesterday might have been the best day on the show that I've ever done. Like, I just wish I bet everything because I don't even know if there was a single thing I was wrong about, to be honest. Like, I had both college football games right. I had almost every single NBA game right. NHL, I think I was right about all, but maybe one of them. I was getting everything right yesterday. The one college basketball game that didn't make my card that I kind of liked that was close, Loyola Marymount, only covered the initial number on that, the 7.5. So if you did play that one, you had to have gotten it early because it closed like 8 or 9. So they did not, it closed, I think, 9. So they didn't cover the 9. They won by 8. But the actual plays that I had, yeah, I mean, Georgia, that was laughable. Georgia was up 26 at the half, and I'm like, all right, they just have to just buckle down, put it away, wear Maryland Eastern Shore down. Maryland Eastern Shore only scored, I think, 29 points in the entire game. They didn't top 20 in either half. And Georgia wound up winning the game by 65. So even though that line was up to like 34, that range by the time the game went off, that didn't even matter. That was just a ridiculously easy win. UC Davis wasn't great early on in the game, but they turned it on. They had a really nice second half, wound up winning that game fairly easily. And then Brooklyn Nets, outright win, baby. I told you. I get stubborn. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to play the Brooklyn Nets. I'm like, oh, you're challenging me, Jeffrey? All right, well, how about Brooklyn wins the game outright? How about that? I'll call for an outright upset with the winless Brooklyn Net team. And that is what happened. They won outright. Yeah, a bunch of those other games I think I got correct. The Celtics covered in a blowout win. Cleveland was correct, although I think they barely covered. I got the Knicks correct. One thing that I forgot to point out, which I did point out in the comments, was that was actually a reverse injured player spot, I'm pretty sure, from Minnesota as well, because Anthony Edwards came back. So you knew that would shrink the line on the Knicks even more. I think it went down to 3.5 or 3, and then that means that Minnesota is going to have to get used to having him play again. He's going to have to get used to it again. They might take their foot off the gas a little bit, whatever the case may be. So that made me like the Knicks even a little bit more there. Maybe I should have given it out as a play. I mean, yesterday I was right about everything, dude. The Washington Capitals was the closest to a play for me in hockey. They won 6-1. I was right about the Blackhawks as well, which that was a nice market read on that one. Although the market reads that I faded, it seemed like I was right about those too. Let's get into today. Today I'm going to have 4 college basketball plays, and hopefully I'm not going too crazy here. I mean, the board's starting to open up. I'm starting to see some situations. So I'm like, all right, why not? And then we're going to have one hockey play, and then that's it. There's only one NBA game, and I'm not interested in it. College football, I'll give out some opinions. Don't think I want to have a play on either of those. And then there is an NFL game tonight, which I don't have a play on that either, and it's a pretty ugly one. At least, well, yeah, I mean, one of the teams is not bad, but it's still an ugly football game. All right. College basketball is where we'll start here, just as is tradition. I mean, we still have a lot of, like, Division II teams getting involved, including one at 11:30 a.m. with a Division II team against Loyola, Maryland, so enjoy that. And then an afternoon game with Whittier against Cal State Bakersfield, another D2 versus D1 matchup. First play I'm going to give out is at 6:30 p.m., and I don't know what the number actually is on this one right now because I can see what it looks like on the pregame screen here, but the books, like I'm in Massachusetts, I don't see any numbers in any of the books right now. I didn't really look at the offshores or anything like that, but I like Long Island plus the points here. It looks like they're going to be about a 2.5-point underdog. If the line is different, I don't know if I'm going to say to not play this, but IUPUI flipped from +2 to -2.5, and I just don't understand why they would even deserve to be a favorite here. I think it might just be all recency bias, but this number might not actually be what it winds up being. Like, it might wind up being Long Island as a slight favorite. If it's still in that pick the winner price, I probably still like this one. Ken Baum has Long Island as the better team. He has IUPUI as like one of the worst 20 teams in the country, although I know it's early, so you can't really put that much stock into what Ken Baum's ratings are right now because there's just not enough data to go on. Long Island lost to Notre Dame in their opener at Notre Dame. I don't think there's anything really surprising to see in that one. I mean, they're 15.5-point underdogs. They lost. They didn't cover. They weren't horrendous in the game, but it was just expected, although actually this was kind of an outlier, though, even though LIU did get dominated on the boards. Notre Dame shot 49.1% from the field, 51.9% from three, and actually lost the turnover battle. So this is a bit of an outlier game, actually, where it looked like Notre Dame maybe shouldn't have won by as much as they did. It was just mostly just the field goal percentages, even though, yes, they're the bigger team, so they dominated the boards too. But Long Island had a very bad shooting game as well, though sometimes you got to be careful with saying this is a complete outlier because in the NBA, you could definitely say that because there's so much parity in the NBA, but in college basketball, you do have to look a little bit into, this team just kind of got dominated by a better team, and that's why their shooting percentages were so low. But still, LIU, 38.2% from the field, 33.3% from three is not that much of an outlier, but 38.2% from the field, really, really low. So I think you got to expect them to shoot better against a bad IUPUI team that didn't play any defense in their first game. But all I hear about IUPUI is everybody's talking about, oh my God, like Ohio State beat this good IUPUI team. And I'm like, wait, what? Because Ohio State gave up 102 points to IUPUI. And this is basically the crux of why I want to fade IUPUI here because they are not good. And the fact they put up 102 against Ohio State, I think is more damning of Ohio State than it is anything to do with like IUPUI actually being any good. And they still lost the game by double digits. They covered as Ohio State was a 33.5-point favorite and they only won by 16. The game wasn't so close that it was like, I don't even see where's the, I hate how they put the win probability up here instead of the game flow. But yeah, the game wasn't that close, but still, I mean, IUPUI was within 10 points late in the game, so they were still kind of in this game against Ohio State, which was a huge game for IUPUI. And they did play well. They shot 50% from the field. Ohio State shot 63% from the field. That's a major field goal outlier there, although, yeah, that sort of indicates that maybe Ohio State should have been even closer to losing this game. Yeah, but I just think the fact that people see IUPUI put up this many points against Ohio State, they're just going to be way overvalued in the marketplace because of that, in my opinion. Like, I just saw people calling them good, and I'm like, dude, they're one of like the worst 20 teams in Division One right now. Like they're almost always one of the absolute worst teams in Division One, and I don't really see a reason why that would have changed significantly at all. I just think they stepped it up. I think it was a weird game, kind of an outlier. I think Ohio State, maybe their defense is not good this year. I don't know. But after that, now, yes, it is IUPUI's home opener, but even so, you're coming off a game where you put up over 100 against Ohio State, man. And again, that's also a situation where when you have a team that looks really good in a loss, you tend to want to fade that team in the next game. That is the case with IUPUI here. And they also actually have a huge game up next 2 days from now on Saturday. They got to play Butler. And Butler's one of the big boys in the state of Indiana. IUPUI, or actually they're IU Indianapolis now. That's a huge game for IUPUI because not only is that an in-state Big Brother situation there, but it's an in-city Big Brother situation. So I think this is a sandwich spot that IUPUI is in. I think it's bad, dude. I'm not going to fade a team in their home opener very often, but I think this is a situation where you do want to do it. So, and Long Island, at least according to KenPom, is actually like about 100 ranking spots better than IUPUI. His IUPUI just really, really bad, which is, again, the case almost every single year. Take Long Island, although, again, we don't really know what the number is going to be like yet, so you got to watch that one throughout the day. All right, we got a bunch of other D2 teams playing each other. Some of these games are just total mismatches between bad, like, small conference teams and bigger conference teams, whatever. Illinois State and Ohio is at least a competitively lined game, so it's somewhat interesting. Not going to be one of my plays, but Illinois State actually hasn't even played yet. Ohio lost to Arkansas State in their opener. Arkansas State, pretty good basketball team. They've been in the mix, potentially winning the Sun Belt title like multiple years in a row. So that's not really a bad loss. Ohio losing, even though it was their home opener, they lost by 4 to Arkansas State. I could kind of see this going both ways. Like you could argue that was a big game for them, and now they have St. Mary's and Louisville coming up after this, so maybe they don't play that well against Illinois State here. But Illinois State's coming in cold because they haven't played yet. So sometimes I do like to look towards the team that already has a game under their belt. So I could kind of see this going both ways. So it's a little bit difficult to handicap this one with the way that I do things. Ohio has actually flipped from a 1.5-point dog going through the pick'em, so they're basically flipping to being the favorite here. So it looks like some money, at least early, has come in on Ohio, although in these small basketball games that the public isn't really getting involved in, you got to kind of take that with a little bit of a grain of salt because, yes, that move was likely professional money, but you don't know if they did that at like a lower limit just to try to set something up, although in this case, if that was the case, it would probably just be the guys that try to play the money line, like both sides being an underdog, just to try to guarantee a small profit because right around a pick'em price, there's no real significant number there necessarily. So even though it is basketball, every point matters a little bit, but yeah. So the money's saying Ohio. I'm not quite sure that I agree with it. Again, I think they do have this game surrounded by bigger games, so I kind of lean against it slightly, but I don't really have a strong opinion on that. It's just kind of an interesting one. Central Connecticut's playing against Quinnipiac. Quinnipiac's a pretty big favorite here. That's an in-state Connecticut, I don't want to say rivalry, but Connecticut game there at least. Quinnipiac is coming off playing St. John's, so they started the season with a big game. They, of course, got blown out, but that's not surprising, obviously, because St. John's is the significantly better team. Quinnipiac, you could argue they have a bigger game up next against Yale as well, so this does look a little bit sandwichy because maybe they do overlook Central Connecticut, who is basically a little brother to them in the state at this point. Central Connecticut being in the Northeastern Conference, which I forgot to mention them as one of the worst conferences because I mentioned the SWAC and the MEAC, but the NEC is really bad as well. So sorry to the NEC. I forgot to give you your accolades for being one of the worst conferences. So yeah, I would kind of lean to taking the points with Central Connecticut here. I could see Quinnipiac looking ahead to Yale, and Quinnipiac is in Hamden, Connecticut, which is really close to New Haven. So Yale is, I think, a bigger game for them. And Yale is, of course, in the Ivy, so they're in a better conference than Quinnipiac is in the MAAC. Not to be confused with the MAC. Central Connecticut beat whoever the hell that VTSJ, who the hell is that? I have no idea. Virginia Tech San Jose is what I'm going to call them. So they beat some Division II team in a blowout to start. So they have a little bit of momentum. It's Vermont State Johnson is who that is. Yeah, great. Whatever. Yeah, in this game, Quinnipiac, I think, is about an 8-point favorite. Yeah, they're down from 8.5 to 7.5, so the money seems to be actually agreeing with me and taking the points to Central Connecticut in that one. Slight lean in that game that way. Lemoyne at Xavier, this actually is close to being a play for me. I would lay the points with Xavier here. Now, Xavier has a new coach because they lost Sean Miller, as I pointed out, to Texas, so there are going to be some growing pains here for Xavier, so you might worry a little bit about that. But they just almost lost to Marist in their first game. Xavier was a double-digit favorite, 12.5. So when you see a team that was a big favorite like that and they almost lost the game, you do tend to want to look to play on that team in the next game. Although, again, Xavier lost their coach and a couple of their players over to Texas. Xavier was horrific in this game shooting, 34% from the field, 26.9% from three. And when you do that as the better team, like that's a major, major outlier. They just had a horrific shooting game that I think is probably not going to be replicated again. And I think because they had a bad game as a double-digit favorite, I think they're going to show up focused, where normally they might not be against a bad team like Lemoyne, who I think is in that Northeastern Conference. Lemoyne, I mean, you could argue they're going to show up as well. They're off to a 1-0 start with a win over some New York Division II team. New York, SUNY Cobleskill. Yeah, okay, whatever that is. I think State University of New York, CB, Cobleskill. They do CB radio there. They just talk to truckers. So Lemoyne, I mean, they're off to a decent start. They got some momentum after an easy win, basically. You could argue they will be focused, though, for a game against Xavier because it is one of the bigger games on their schedule. Oh, they get to play a Big East team. I mean, that is pretty big. So it actually might be it's their biggest opponent besides Texas on their entire schedule this year, I would say, because BC doesn't really get any respect anymore. So that's my one hesitation with it, but I do lean to Xavier here. But the money is somewhat come in against it, at least for now, ticking the line down from 23 to 22.5 on Xavier. We'll see what happens in that game. I'm just going kind of in order of the board here. I'm not really doing a best bets segment here, although maybe I should just call everything the best bets segment, because why not? The whole show is the best bets at this point, man. The rest of my college basketball players are going to be laying big favorites here, which I think we're in good spots to do this. Next one up, we're going to lay Miami, Florida, minus 17.5. Miami's not that good this year, and I know they carry some name recognition because they're Miami. They have a good football program right now. They were pretty good in basketball for a couple of years, although those days are gone, of course. But they're facing Bethune-Cookman, man, and because Miami, I think, is somewhat down as a program right now, you actually get a decent number on this with 17.5. I don't know what KenPom has on this. I think KenPom might have them winning by slightly more in this game than that. Actually, he might not, actually, but I just don't care. I mean, these KenPom numbers, especially when you get into the double digits, they're a little bit off right now. It looks like the actual money is driving this line up, so this is reminiscent of yesterday when the line was just flying out of control on Georgia. This line is up from 16 to 18.5 here already. So the money is agreeing with me on Miami. So these numbers I'm going to give out, you probably got to jump on these pretty quickly because I think these numbers are going to get a little bit more out of control. Every point matters a little bit. Once you get into this range, I mean, there are no key numbers here. Like, this isn't football, so 17 is not a key number in basketball. You just need to get the best number that you can. So you don't Miami doesn't have to be pushed to the limit here, but this is really going to be a fade of Bethune-Cookman. For Miami, it doesn't really matter too much to them, I don't think, but I just think Bethune-Cookman is just going to fall flat in this game. Miami had a game against Jacksonville to open the season. Really, that was just kind of a momentum starter for Miami. They actually didn't cover in the game. They won by 17 as an 18.5-point favorite, so really not a surprising result in any way there. The Miami was actually particularly bad from three-point range, so they might be able to improve that. They dominated on the boards, which is a decent sign. Jacksonville, I mean, they're not a terrible team for one of those lower conference teams. They're in what conference are they in? The Atlantic Sun, I think. They're one of the better teams in the Atlantic Sun over the last few years at the very least. You know, Jacksonville gets up to play these in-state bigger brothers like Miami. But yeah, Miami was very bad from three-point range, 21.4%. So bit of an outlier they might be able to improve upon, although they were too good from the field, probably because they were just way taller than Jacksonville, I assume, which is why they dominated the boards. They were probably just getting a lot of close range shots and dunks in this game for them to have a field goal percentage of 55.1%. So yeah, they might, I mean, I wouldn't even want to say that they would take a step back from that because Bethune-Cookman is worse than Jacksonville. So, I mean, I think, actually, I'm not sure about that because Bethune-Cookman is actually one of the least bad teams in the SWAC, although the SWAC is terrible. Actually, I'm wrong. Jacksonville is a worse team, but still, I don't really see Miami being like outsized by Bethune-Cookman. And now here's the thing. Bethune-Cookman, they're coming off that overtime game against Auburn. Like, they went to Auburn, who was one of the national title contenders last year, and they took Auburn to overtime. I mean, when a small team does that as a huge underdog, they were a 24.5-point underdog, and they almost pull off an upset against one of these upper echelon teams like Auburn. You want to fade that team in the next game, man. It's just as simple as that. Second straight road game in a couple of days. Yeah, I mean, generally you'd say they want to get up for Miami, but that Auburn game was huge. I think they shot their wad in that game. They had a chance to win that game, fell short. I think they're in a bad spot here, so I think they're going to get blown out by Miami here. That would be my opinion in this one, similar to what I did yesterday with the Georgia game. So you will find me on some big college basketball favorites in these weird early season games. Usually not otherwise, but yeah, in a game like this, yeah, this line actually isn't even really that high. But it is because Miami's not really that good. Yes, I know, again, Bethune-Cookman is probably one of the better teams in their awful SWAC conference, but it's still a really bad conference, and they're in a terrible spot. And remember, Auburn was transitioning to their new coach, Bruce Pearl's son, although I think he's probably going to keep his father's system in place or whatever, so there should be a little bit less turnover for that reason. But Auburn did lose like a bunch of their best players from last year too, so I think it was kind of expected they wouldn't like storm out of the gate. But I don't know if it was expected they would do that poorly against an outclassed team. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is, and now the Bethune-Cookman is coming off almost pulling off a monumental upset for the program. I think they're in a horrible spot here, so I would lay it with Miami in that one. Jeffrey, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. I know I started early today. I apologize. I'm a little bit inconsistent with that. All right, let's keep going. College basketball. Drake is back in action against Robert Morris. I mean, Drake didn't have a particularly good game against Northern Arizona in their first game. Drake with some turnover there because they actually lost their coach from last year, Ben McCollum, who was only there for 1 year. He brought his guys up from Division II, Southwest Missouri State or something like that. They did really well just because they had all this chemistry together. They did really well last year. They won a tournament game last year. And they were good enough that he left and went to Iowa and took a bunch of his players with. So this Drake team is having to reset again this year. Didn't look very good against Northern Arizona. Didn't cover. Maybe they'll come out with a little bit of a better performance here against Robert Morris. Robert Morris got blown out by that Iowa team. Interestingly, they faced Ben McCollum's current team, his new team, and now they have to face his old team. Very, very strange. So the interesting thing about that, though, is that Robert Morris is now going to face a similar style because McCollum likes to kind of slow the pace down, although it doesn't look like his team did that in that Iowa game because they scored over 100 points. That looks like the old Iowa with Fran McCaffrey, where they would just run the floor and just score a shit ton. So I don't know what that was. I'm expecting Iowa to be a much slower-paced team this year, though, because Robert Morris did play against that style of team, and I think Drake is still that style of team. Maybe they at least have some experience in doing that, and they're at least staying in the state of Iowa because Drake is also in Iowa. But I don't know, man. Drake, I could see them potentially bouncing back to. The line has moved down a little bit from 9.5 to 9 on this one. I don't have a great feel for this game, obviously. The money seems to be kind of coming in on Robert Morris plus the points for now. It's one of those games, yeah, we'll just see what happens. I don't have a strong opinion on it. North Florida at Florida. I was kind of considering jumping in on this one, man. I would lean to taking the points with North Florida on this one. I don't really know how good North Florida is this year. They've been okay in that A-Sun conference recently, but actually Ken Palm has them really bad so far this year at 343rd in the country. So maybe they're way down this year, but the spot is not good for Florida. I mean, Florida, they came out, they had a big game in their first game, huge, like Las Vegas showcase game. They lost to Arizona. Really, really tough game for them. Now they have to face North Florida, who is a little brother in the state of Florida, and you know North Florida will at least try to get up for this game emotionally or whatever, even though they're going to be outmatched. They're going to try to win this game. But after this, Florida does have their bigger, like, in-state rivals against Florida State and Miami. So I think they might look past North Florida here. It does look like a sandwich spot here. So I do lean to North Florida on this one. North Florida, though, they haven't even played yet. So coming in really, really cold might be a bad thing for North Florida. That's one of my hesitations I have. That, and plus, I think they might just be totally outmatched in this one. So sometimes I do worry about playing just a really, really bad team against a team that could almost like name the score against them. Although when you're playing on the team that could name the score, which I am doing in some of these, sometimes you got to worry about them just taking their foot off the gas, which at least we didn't have to worry about that last night because Georgia was just dominating the game so hard. But yeah, North Florida, they're going to have to come out of the gate and play Florida and Tennessee each on the road. That is a pretty difficult opening to their schedule there. They're going to be 0-2. So yeah, I don't like the spot for Florida, though. So if I played this game, I would take the points with North Florida. Florida's all the way up from a 36-point favorite to now a 42.5-point favorite. The money seems to just be coming in on Florida and jacking that line up and up and up. I mean, it was like 38-39 when I looked like a half hour ago. It's just insane. That line is getting crazy. So if you do lean to North Florida like I do, you're at least getting more points on the line in that one at the very least. So, you know, do with that information what you will, I guess. Yeah, I mean, the other thing I do like to look at, by the way, just to throw it out there, is I do look at the totals. So in some of these games, you tend to not necessarily want to lay like a ton of points with low totals, although I am about to do it in one of these games. That Miami game doesn't have a really low total. One of the next games I'm going to be on is a very low total, but I think it's basically because the opponent is just horrific offensively. Hold on a second, which I'm going to talk about right now, actually. Yeah, man, college basketball pick. Which one? I had two of them. 3-0 in NBA. Hell yeah. Nets, Denver, and you had under in which game? Did Denver cover? Maybe they did. Yeah, I guess they did. I don't know. I don't remember. Dude, I felt like I got every single thing right yesterday. It was crazy. I told you the Nets would win outright, though. And I also told you the Knicks would win. And I forgot to point out that it was also a reverse injured player spot on the side of Minnesota with AE coming back in that game. Anthony Edwards, I apologize for swigging water here, which I'm sure sounds very sexy. But yeah, that's good, man. Hell yeah, you got these wins. Yeah, I mean, good with the totals as well. I don't really do the totals, so I'm doing really well with the sides here. But yeah, hopefully you played both college games yesterday because they were both wins that were not that difficult. And hopefully we continue because I know last year, like basically once it got to March, my college basketball completely fell apart. But usually it's not that way. I've had some insane runs in college basketball, like the 2 years prior, I think, like early in 2023, I guess it was. The 2022-2023 season, early in 2023, I had an insane college basketball run where it was like I wasn't getting anything wrong. So I don't know. Somewhere in like January, February. All right. Next play. Wait a minute. Do I have these out of? I think I have them out of order in my banners here. I do. We're going to lay the points with Auburn. We're going to go to that other side of the game I was talking about with Bethune-Cookman. I see it out there at 25.5, 26.5 right now. I don't think there's a huge difference between those two. I see a 25.5 out there at one of the mass books. I think it was Bally Bets. They're one of the newer ones, and they don't know what they're doing. But, hey, if you get a better number, then you get a better number. The money looks like it's agreeing with this. Auburn's up from 23.5 to 27. They had a bad game in their opener, man. That is what it is. They almost lost to Bethune-Cookman. But when you have a good team like Auburn, they're still a good team. I mean, I don't think they're going to completely disappear this year, even though obviously they're not going to be. I don't think they're going to be a national title contender like they were the last couple of years. They're still a good team, though, and they're a lot better than what they showed in this Bethune-Cookman game where they had to go into overtime to get the win over Bethune-Cookman. By the way, Bethune-Cookman, this goes towards both these plays I'm giving out here with the Miami one and this one. Bethune-Cookman shot out of their minds in this game. They shot 54.5% from three. That's never going to happen again, especially with a bad team like that, or not a very good team at the very least. But yeah, Bethune-Cookman, I mean, they might dominate the SWAC, but whatever. That's still the SWAC. Auburn only shot 26.1% from three. You got to think that's going to improve. They did still win the rebound battle, and they won the turnover battle. But yeah, the shooting, three-point shooting especially, was a big outlier. Bethune-Cookman shooting 50% from the field. That's also a bit of an outlier. Merrimack is who Auburn is playing here. Merrimack, they can't shoot at all. So I think Auburn's going to have an easier time in this one. I know this is the one with the low total. It's in the 140s. It's gone up a little bit, though. But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that Merrimack can't score. And yeah, Merrimack might try to slow Auburn down here, but Auburn's the way better team. So if Auburn wants to play faster than Merrimack, they should be able to do that. And that would be similar to Georgia last night, where Georgia was just able to speed up the game and just make it completely out of control. Auburn, so far, they're sort of a mid-tempo team, right in the middle, actually slightly below average tempo. But I am pretty sure Merrimack likes to play excessively slow, which you see here. They're 324th in tempo right now in KenPom. Merrimack, yeah, slow team that can't shoot, bad stuff. I mean, maybe they play defense, but I'm not going to hold my breath. And Merrimack's actually coming off a good performance against South Dakota State. Merrimack was a 6.5-point underdog. This was, I believe, Merrimack's, or no, it wasn't a home opener. This is actually at Sioux Falls, South Dakota. So this is actually a semi-home game for South Dakota State, playing in their home state. And Merrimack almost was able to win this game. Merrimack actually was winning the game later in the game. Merrimack did shoot terribly in the game, which you could, I guess, argue that was an outlier, although both teams shot pretty poorly. Merrimack was really bad, 32.1% from the field, 27.6% from three. Usually that's going to make me want to look towards that team in the next game because I'm like, well, they got to shoot better than that. But even if they do, they're still a bad shooting team, and they got dominated on the boards here. South Dakota State dominated them, and if South Dakota State can dominate them with size and whatever, and probably, I guess, physicality, you got to think that Auburn should be able to beat them even more in that department. Again, I think Auburn had a predictably slow start because they're transitioning to Stephen Pearl as their new coach there. Same system, though, and they had to, they're having to get used to having new players there. And yeah, sometimes it takes a few games, so maybe you got to worry about that a little bit. Like, they'll probably have better chemistry later on in the season. But I think the fact that they got that game out of the way, and it was a terrible game. Stephen Pearl, post-game press conference, was basically talking about how they need to do better than that. I like when a coach is saying that because that means he's going to be drilling his players coming into this one. They're going to show up focused. This is on their home floor as well. I'm pretty sure their first game was as well. They don't want to have another embarrassing performance like that. Merrimack's coming up almost pulling off an upset as well. They were winning in the second half of that game, and they're having to travel from South Dakota in a span of a couple of days, so the travel spot is worse for them too. I think Auburn is going to blow them out, so that's the play there. Auburn minus the points. Oh, money on the under. I might have mentioned that, yeah, just looking at the pregame screen, yeah. Yeah, well, all right. So that was a winner. That's good. Good to hear as well. I don't really remember that one, but Charles Barkley's Steakhouse Cigar Bar in outside of Philly. Yeah, you should go to it, man. Barkley, former 76er, obviously. All right. Rest of these games, I mean, a lot of them I don't find very interesting. Texas A&M has an in-state game against Texas Southern, so maybe you argue Texas Southern is going to at least show up for an in-state little brother situation. But A&M, obviously the way better team, will be a huge favorite there. So not really something I would want to get involved in. Omaha, I've talked about how I think they're a bit overvalued because they made that ridiculous run through the Summit to get to the tournament last year. I didn't think they were the best team in the Summit last year. I was surprised they were able to do what they did. They got pretty much blown out by St. John's, I think, in the tournament. Omaha did lose their first game this season. Now they're having to go to Abilene Christian, who has a decent basketball program throughout the years. So I would probably be looking to continue fading Omaha. Abilene Christian is taking the money up from 3 to 4.5 there already. So the money is coming in. A lot of these lines move quick in college basketball in these games where the public's not getting involved. So yeah, another little thing to talk about there on that one. I would continue fading the Omaha hype that might be still there off of last year. Texas A&M CC is playing an in-state game against SMU, so you got to think they might show up for that game, at least emotionally. But SMU, obviously the better team, will be a big favorite there. I'm going to talk about my last play in a second, but my last college basketball play. I do have one hockey play, but the Mercyhurst and Loyola Chicago game, kind of interesting. Mercyhurst, I don't even know where the fuck they are. They're one of the newer Division I teams. I almost said FBS, not FBS. Division I basketball has 300 whatever teams now. Loyola Chicago, I would look to play on them here, although I would have some hesitations with it. But they were a big favorite against Cleveland State, 17.5-point favorite against Cleveland State in their first game at home. And they had to win on a buzzer beater at the end of the game. So when you're a big favorite like that and you almost lose the game, sometimes it will focus you coming into the next game. So you might expect more focus from them coming into this one. Mercyhurst, they did get absolutely blown out by Northwestern, so that means they're staying in the Chicago area here. You could argue they're going to try to play better than they did in that first game. They were just outmatched by a Big Ten team. I mean, not totally surprising there. But I do kind of expect Loyola after that game that they would show up with more focus. The issue I might have with it is that they might be looking ahead to North Texas, which is going to be one of these, highlight games. It's going to be, it's at No Arena. Is that Loyola Chicago's home? I don't even know. It has an asterisk on it, so that usually means it's like a neutral game, like showcase type of game. So I don't know what that game is going to be. But North Texas has been a pretty decent team in their conference over the last couple of years too. So it is possible Loyola just still takes Mercyhurst lightly, though. The one other issue I have with it is that was Loyola Chicago's first home game without Sister Jean, R.I.P. As we might know, Sister Jean, she lived to be like 108, 109 years old, whatever. She was the old nun or former nun or whatever who became like the most famous fan of Loyola Chicago back with their Final Four run, which was long ago, like over a decade ago, and she was really old then, and she lived, up until very recently. So this is their first home game without her. So I'm assuming they had a big thing for her, honored her. So that was like an emotional game for them. Weird that they didn't come out and like play better in that case, but it was probably still an emotional game for them. So I wouldn't really want to play them off of that game for that reason. The money's actually kind of fading them here. They're down from 21.5 to 21, at least with the early line movement there. Just I thought that game was a little bit interesting to talk about. Spoelstra's house burned down. Well, that's really some Miami Heat. Ooh. Is that going to be a distraction then for the Miami Heat? I don't know. They don't play tonight, but that is interesting to know. I don't know what's going on. What's going on with all these houses on fire with Miami, like professional sports, man? Like Tyreek Hill, like one of his kids lit his house on fire last year or whatever, and then he probably beat him because that's what Tyreek Hill does. Tyreek Hill, I'm not totally saddened by the fact that he's injured right now and possibly his career won't return, but whatever. The last play that I have is similar to what my other plays were. We're going to lay the points with TCU, minus 25.5 here. They're up to 26.5 here. Similar number. I mean, 1 point less of value in a dead number range. I mean, you just hope they come in and blow out St. Francis, PA, who is the only St. Francis now because St. Francis, New York disbanded their basketball program or something. I don't know. St. Francis, PA is in that really ugly Northeastern Conference. I think Merrimack is as well. So we're fading some really low conference teams here. But these are spots where I think the good team will show up here. St. Francis, first of all, they're not a good team. Ken Baum has them very low at one of the bottom 20 teams in the country. Just not good at all on either side of the ball. He does have them as kind of a mid-tempo team, though. So just something to keep in mind, at least for now. And so is TCU, so this won't really be a tempo clash. TCU is just obviously the better team, though, even though they're not really a great Big 12 team right now. I still think TCU is coached by Jamie Dixon there, so they do have a good coach. So I trust them more to bounce back in a spot like this than I would, maybe some teams with lesser coaches there. St. Francis, I mean, they're having a difficult start to their schedule. They had to play Oklahoma on the road in the first game. They got blown out. I mean, that was not surprising. Oklahoma, solid team. They're in the SEC now. But now they have to play a second big game in a row. Don't really think I would consider it to be a bounce back spot. I think it was just a predictable blowout loss, and I think this might be another one, even though TCU is not as good as Oklahoma. TCU just lost to New Orleans in their opener. That can't stand, man, and that was TCU's home opener. And this game was even worse than it looked on the scoreboard. But either way, people are going to look at this and just see how embarrassing it was just in general for TCU to lose to New Orleans. TCU was a 21.5-point favorite. And again, with these opening games, sometimes you just see really, really weird results because sometimes these better teams just aren't ready. They just don't have the chemistry yet. But getting that game under their belt and getting punched in the mouth and getting embarrassed, I think does help them focus pretty fast. New Orleans shot fairly well in the game, 49.1% from the field, but really the story was TCU shot horrifically, 38.8% from the field and 11.1% from three. That's a major outlier. I mean, that's well below what these teams average, although it is not a good thing that New Orleans out-rebounded TCU. Like, that's not good. And TCU won the turnover battle and still lost the game, but I still expect a bounce back off of just a horrific performance like this. And New Orleans is not as bad as St. Francis, so that's something to keep in mind as well. New Orleans is at 237th overall, according to KenPom right now, so they're about 100 ranking spots higher. So TCU gets to step down in class, and they're only laying a few more points than they were in that other game, which I know once you get into the bottom 100 teams, it doesn't, it starts not mattering as much what the number really is. But I still think this number is actually a little bit short just based on what we saw in the last game. And then looking at the game flow, TCU was getting absolutely blown out of this game. So they actually came back and had maybe some chances to win this game late. Still lost, but still that just makes it more embarrassing, man. The fact that they were just getting absolutely drilled by a team that's way worse than them. So something to keep in mind. New Orleans is probably one of the top, maybe 4 or 5 teams in their conference, though, in the Southland. Although the Southland, not very good. But to me, it looks like a refocus, bounce back spot for TCU. They're playing at home again. They do not want to be embarrassed again at home like that. Same with Auburn, except this might even be crazier because TCU actually lost that game. So TCU will be the play there. All right, hockey. These are gonna start getting to be long shows, man, because of college basketball. For the Saturday college basketball, I think I have to do Friday night show and then do the college football Friday night show right after it or something. It's gonna start getting crazy, man. Maybe I should start actually putting money on these games again. In hockey, we got whatever this is, about 9 games today. Ottawa at my Boston Bruins. My first reaction to this is that the Bruins are in kind of a revenge spot because they lost to Ottawa ugly not that long ago, 7-2 on October 27th. Could be a little bit of a bounce back spot here, but you don't know what the Bruins are going to do with their goalie. Are they going to play Swayman in this one again? It seems like typically what they've done is they've let him play 1 or 2 games and then they switch to Korpisalo. So the Bruins may play Korpisalo. He is worse than Swayman, so that would give me some hesitation on the Bruins just because of that. The Bruins, I thought they were going to lose that game to the Islanders, and they wound up winning in a shootout in what I thought was a bad spot because the Bruins had beaten Carolina. They had this, what I thought was a bigger game against Ottawa up next. They do have Toronto up next, which is an original 6 matchup. That's big as well. They're not going to overlook Ottawa, though. I mean, Ottawa just beat them. Ottawa has their former goalie, Allmark. So, it's a thing. The Bruins, they've been playing better hockey right now. They've won 4 games in a row, so I'm happy about that as a Bruins fan. Really, the only angle I can really see for the Bruins here, though, is that it's a revenge spot. For Ottawa, they've had more days off, and they lost at Montreal on Saturday, and they haven't played since then. So Ottawa is the way more rested team here, and they're coming off kind of a bad performance, and they're almost certainly going to have Allmark in net for this one again because he plays most of their games, and he's had a bunch of days to rest here, so almost guaranteed that'll be the case. The money is actually coming in on Ottawa in this one. 81% of the cash, 57% of tickets on the Bruins because the Bruins have been hot recently. There's a reason why Ottawa's favored on the road, though, at minus 130 on the road, where I think Ottawa was a bigger favorite against the Bruins when they were at home as well. So I think this is basically in line with that. I mean, I can look and see what the line was real quick in that game. Yeah, Ottawa was minus 165. The money actually came in on the Bruins in that one, and the Bruins lost. I mean, the reason why the cash is coming in on Ottawa is the goaltender situation and the rest situation for Ottawa. The only thing I can see with the Bruins is that they should be motivated to get revenge here. That's the only thing I could say about it. So I don't want to play either side here. The money is saying Ottawa. I don't necessarily disagree with that probably the scheduling spot and the goaltender situation probably outweighs the revenge spot, but I don't really love it at all, man. I think it'll be a big game for both teams as well, where I think both teams will show up. You could argue that Ottawa's could potentially be in a hangover after a big game against Montreal, but with so many days off, I just don't really think so. And they're not looking ahead to anything either, because Philadelphia is just not great. Although, I don't know, did Ottawa lose to Philadelphia recently? No, they beat them 2-1. I forget if that was a game where I had a play on it or not. St. Louis at Buffalo. St. Louis, they're in a back-to-back, so that's basically the worst thing about their spot here is they're playing a third game in 4 days, actually, and a fourth game in 6 days, all in different cities, and they've been kind of going back and forth all over the place. Also playing, I believe that's a fifth game in 8 days as well, where they were at home. They went to Columbus, back home, and then they went to Washington yesterday, so they're kind of going zigzagging all over the place. They got blown out yesterday, which I thought that Washington would win that game. Wish I gave it out as a play because St. Louis had beaten Edmonton, so it seemed like kind of a classic letdown spot at the very least. Now they're on a back-to-back, although they played ugly yesterday, but because they're on the back-to-back, it does probably mean that Hofer will be in net for them instead of Binnington, and that is a step down in goaltending for the Blues because they played Binnington yesterday, so it's almost certainly going to be Hofer here. So I don't love it for that reason, even though I could see maybe an argument they're in a bounce-back spot, but the schedule is also really jam-packed for them right now. Buffalo did not play yesterday. They did lose to Utah the prior game, but they actually beat Washington the game before that, though. So in a way, the recreational handicappers might say, oh, Buffalo beat Washington, who just killed St. Louis yesterday. So obviously Buffalo should win this game. So there's that transitive property thing going on that the public might look at where usually you want to fade that sentiment. So that would be one reason to maybe look towards St. Louis here, but I just gave some reasons not to. Buffalo coming off a loss to Utah again on Tuesday. Tough game for them. Utah's been good recently. They've actually played 5 straight overtime games, although they are the more rested team still because they only played on Saturday and Tuesday. So they've played one fewer game in the mix there in that last stretch of games. So Buffalo's the more rested team. The money is coming in on Buffalo. I won't disagree with it. I mean, I think that's probably the way to look at this game. Even though St. Louis got absolutely drilled yesterday, part of it is also the goaltending situation. Buffalo up from minus 125 to minus 132, 83% of tickets, 95% of the cash on Buffalo. For Buffalo, I don't even think it really matters which goaltender is in net because I don't like any of their goalies. So it's just how I look at it personally. It's nothing really personal, though. So I agree. I would lean to Buffalo in that one. That one, I have some hesitations with it. Montreal and New Jersey, probably one of the best games, if not maybe actually debatably the best game of the night. Both teams doing well right now. Montreal 9-3-1 to start the season. And they're doing that despite Montembeault not really being that good so far this season. Montreal has actually played 3 overtime games in a row. They did just lose to Philadelphia on Tuesday, and that did end a win streak for them. So sometimes ending a win streak will hang you over a little bit. But it was a loss to Philadelphia. That was a game where I gave out Philadelphia, I'm pretty sure, in that game. Montreal, I thought, was in a bad spot after beating Ottawa, despite that being a return home spot. Big win over Ottawa, and they had this game against New Jersey coming up where I thought they might have more focus on it. They might have Dobes back in net for this one because Montembeault played both the last two, and I think Dobes actually might be an improvement. They've won his last. They've won every single game that he's been in net, actually, all 6 of them. So definitely something to keep in mind there. A couple of them in overtime, though, but they're 4. They're 6-0 because they're all wins, but 2 of them are overtime wins. But yeah, so it might be Dobes back in net, and that would be a good thing for Montreal. For New Jersey just lost ugly against Anaheim way back on Sunday. New Jersey had their hot streak ended, and they've actually lost 3 of 4, although all of those came on the road. But they are returning home from a road trip, which is, as I point out, typically not a good spot because you go out on the road. They went out into Elevation to Colorado, and then they went to the Pacific Coast. They played 3 games in California. Now they're coming back home from that. Sometimes you do get distracted, although I don't think they're going to overlook Montreal because Montreal's been good recently. They got Pittsburgh up next, who does have a good record, but I don't think they carry as much weight right now as Montreal does. Montreal, of course, an original 6 team on the way back up. People are going to pay attention when they get to face them. The distraction may be alleviated a little bit by the fact that New Jersey has had multiple days off since returning home, but it is still a return home spot. I think the spot is actually better for Montreal here. And if Dobes is back in net, that will help Montreal as well. I'm actually tempted to play Montreal here now that I am analyzing this. Sometimes this happens on the show, right? I reanalyze the game, and I'm like, wait a minute. I start seeing it, a little bit more strongly. Although I don't know how well I do at these last editions. So I think the plays that I already have planned out are the stronger ones, as they should be. So what do we want to do with this one? I don't know, man. The fact they have multiple days off might alleviate that. But again, when you return home, you do tend to have some distractions coming into play. New Jersey dropped from -160 to -145 on the money line. So initially there was a move on the money line against them, but they have 60% of the tickets, 89% of the cash on them. So it looks like some of the cash percentage is actually on them for now. Don't know if it's going to stay that way. I would lean to Montreal, though. I'll stay off of it, but, it might be one of those leans where I wind up being right about it. I mean, it happens every day, right? Because you just form opinions on everything, and if you're, it's a sign that you're reading things well, though, if you keep getting a bunch of things right. So, although I don't think I could possibly repeat yesterday with literally everything was right, except for maybe 1 or 2 things, 1 or 2 games. I was shocked. I was like, holy shit, everything was right yesterday. That doesn't happen often. That's not going to happen again. I mean, there's going to be some backslide at some point. Although after yesterday, because I keep tracking it as if I've been betting, this would actually be a new peak as far as since I started tracking on Action Network, which I started using that tool back at the start of 2022, I believe. This would be the most up that I've been since the start. So that's a good sign. I think we're going to wind up on the year, given all that, because we've been so hot recently. I've completely gotten out of the hole and then some. We're doing well right now. All right. Minnesota and Carolina. I mean, this is, I guess, somewhat interesting, although Carolina is definitely the better team here. Minnesota's below 500. Minnesota's won 2 games in a row against mediocre-ish opponents. I mean, maybe Nashville is considered bad. Minnesota now going out on the road to start a road trip with some momentum. So it is a positive spot for them. They're probably going to show up to face a good team like Carolina. Start the road trip off on the right foot. They got some momentum here. It's not a bad spot for Minnesota here at the very least. Carolina is returning home from a quick road trip where they just went to Boston and the Rangers, but they did beat the Rangers 3-0. And it looks like there's a goalie issue here because they actually used Kochetkov in net, which I gave that out as a play. That was a winner for me on the show with Carolina, but I was expecting Anderson to be in net in that one. And I don't know, is Anderson hurt? Because that is definitely something to keep in mind. It doesn't look like there's any news about that. I don't know. I guess they just rested him in that game for whatever reason. Because he is their best goalie, although he is old. But, yeah, I don't know. I don't know which goalie they're going to have in net for this one. I don't worry about the return home spot when it was just a trip up the East Coast for 2 games. I don't think that really matters. They don't really have a big game up next. You could argue it's a little bit of a letdown off of beating the Rangers because maybe you shut out the Rangers on the road. You kind of consider that to be a bigger game. They may have Anderson back in net for this one because he hasn't played since that Saturday against the Bruins. I would still probably lean to Minnesota in this one. And I think the spot sets up a little bit better for them. You get a decent price on them. Carolina up from -180 to -185. Could potentially be in a little bit of a letdown. 85% of tickets, 97% of the cash on Carolina right now. They're looking like a public side at the very least. I don't know about the cash percentage, but probably slightly into Minnesota. Dirty Sock, what's up, man? Thanks for hanging out. I went live like an hour early, man. I apologize. This is part of the reason was, well, I was just up. I can't really get back to sleep once I wake up. I start caffeinating as well, and then I'm like totally fucked. But just a lot of stuff to analyze today. I think I overanalyzed college basketball, but maybe it's all good information. If the Spurs pulled off a win, oh man, you should have parlayed the Spurs spread, man. They covered the spread. Damn. The Spurs were able to cover the spread at the end of it. I think the Spurs were winning a lot of that game outright, though. Like, I think arguably they should have won the game outright. Nice hit on the parlay, though. You hit one of the parlays. Hell yeah. I mean, dude, again, I was right about like so much yesterday on the show. I was like, it was crazy, dude. I was like, yeah, I don't know. I felt like Toadstradamus yesterday. That was crazy. But I still consider myself being correct on the Spurs because I said they would cover the +2.5, and they lost by 2. I'm not happy that the Lakers won, though. I wanted the Spurs to win that game. I like Wemba, and I do not like the Lakers. So, Washington Capitals here, they just ended a 4-game loss streak with a win, but it was yesterday against St. Louis. But I don't know if I'm too worried about it being a back-to-back because they had a lot of days off before that, so they're not going to be a totally fatigued team, I don't think. Maybe you could argue they look too good, though, after they just annihilated St. Louis yesterday. St. Louis was in a bit of a letdown off of that Edmonton win, though. Now Washington going to Pittsburgh. I do think they should be focused just because Pittsburgh has started off pretty well this season, and Washington does have a little bit of momentum after yesterday to carry out on the road with them. Pittsburgh's returning over from a road trip, and I talk about that not really being great. Where they went as far as Minnesota and Winnipeg in the middle of the road trip. Now they're coming home. They've been home since, they had their last road game on Monday. Now they're back home. They've had a couple of days off, so maybe like an extra day rest in there. But it is a return home spot. So usually I tend to think that's a bit of a distraction spot. So I don't love that really. Will they overlook Washington, though? Probably not, even though Washington's got kind of a mediocre record right now. I mean, Washington, they've been good the last couple of years, so to me it doesn't seem like Pittsburgh's really going to overlook them, although you do have to worry about coming back home. You got stuff to do back at home and whatever, so that can be a distraction. The money is coming in on Washington. 88% of the cash on them, 65% of the tickets are on Pittsburgh, and the really interesting thing is you see Washington is the team with the lesser record here, but they're actually favored on the road. So that should kind of tell you something. The odds makers are actually telling you not to buy into this Pittsburgh hot start, and they're actually telling you Washington is the better team. So I'll lean to Washington in that game. That's an opinion on that one. Hell yeah. It's one of those good days, but the bad is that you wish you just gave out plays on everything. I wish I was betting on it, on all of it, man. And instead, I'm not betting any of it right now. I need to free up some money and just start doing this full-time professionally and start betting more on it. I don't know. It probably won't help with my anxiety because even when I was betting like smaller-ish amounts, like whatever, like I would do 300 per game basically. Even then, it was like pretty nerve-wracking and I couldn't watch the games and shit, so I don't know. Philadelphia and Nashville is going to be my play, unfortunately, because I thought I had written this team off, but I see a spot, and I'm like, I have to do it, I think. Anaheim at Dallas. Anaheim's off to a really hot start, man. I will say that. 8-3-1. They're looking good right now. They've won 4 games in a row against good teams. Florida in the shootout, Detroit. All these games at home, though, except for the last one against Florida on the road. The first one against Florida was on the road, I mean. Then at home, they beat Detroit, New Jersey, and then they beat Florida again, 7-3. So the last 3, they actually won every game by 3+ goals, too. This Anaheim team is starting to look really good, but, I mean, they can't possibly be as good as this, man. I just can't see it. And you got to think they're probably going to go back to Mrazek in net here. He's only played 2 games this year, and although they won both games, they gave up 5 and 6 goals in those 2 games. So if it is Mrazek in net, I don't think that's great for Anaheim. Dostal has been in net for most of their games all season. You could argue they're in a letdown spot here after so many big wins in a row, but I don't really think they're going to overlook Dallas either. But at some point, I mean, this Anaheim team, they're just playing so many big games in a row. It's like at some point, it seems like the wheels have to come off here. Maybe it happens here, but they are taking momentum out on the road with them, although I believe Anaheim has not been as good on the road as they have been at home. So something to consider. Actually, they have been pretty good. My mistake, 4-2-1 at home. Dallas is also 4-2-1 on the road. Dallas is 4-2-1 at home, though. And Dallas has an overall good record as well. Dallas coming off a big win, though, over Edmonton. So it could maybe be a spot where Anaheim can actually catch another win here. People are going to see that Anaheim beat Florida twice recently, though, and Dallas lost to them. So that might actually put some of the public on the Anaheim side here. And seeing that this line is actually big, with Dallas being a big favorite, which is the odds makers telling you that they think Dallas is the significantly better team. And I don't disagree with that. So the public might come in and think there's value on Anaheim, seeing that, like seeing it being a big number, getting like some potential value maybe on the team with a better record, and seeing that recent opponent, Florida, Anaheim beat them twice, and Dallas couldn't beat Florida. But for me, the biggest reason why you might want to play Anaheim here is the fact that Dallas lost to they beat Edmonton, and they've played 3 overtime games in a row, but beating Edmonton was huge because that was their revenge game for getting knocked out of the playoffs against Edmonton. I mentioned I leaned to Dallas in that game, and they were able to win in a shootout. So, and they did it with DeSmith in net too, which is insane. I don't know why Ottinger was not in net there, so I have to, I guess, now see if he's hurt. I can't really tell. Like, the news on ESPN just doesn't even really tell you shit. So I don't know. I don't know why it was DeSmith in net there, because Ottinger's their better goalie. If he's not hurt, you got to think he's back in net here, so at least that's a good thing for Dallas. But again, that win over Edmonton is big because it was a playoff revenge game. So what do you do with this game? Man, I mean, the money's saying Dallas, even though they dropped from -190 to -175, 60% of the tickets and 69% of the cash on Dallas. So money kind of saying Dallas here to some extent, even though the money line initially dropped on them. If I was going to play this game, I would probably go over, though. Because especially if Anaheim's going to have to go with Mrazek in net again. Oh, and the money just completely shifted, by the way. This is what happens with these games early in the day. Like, you can't really read that much into some of these, like, numbers, these percentages, because that completely flipped when this just updated. So now Anaheim's got all the money, basically. 78% of the cash, 56% of the tickets. That is in line with the line move, at least. So it looks like the money may be actually saying Anaheim in this one. But I think the better way to do this is the over. 80% of tickets, 93% of cash on the over. I know I'm not a huge totals guy. I was doing okay with NHL overs last year. Then when both teams look like they're kind of in bad spots, especially if Anaheim's using Mrazek, who's been really bad in net. Dallas, I mean, Ottinger could come into this game a little bit cold if they're going to use him in this game, even though he will be rested. I could definitely see goals being scored in this one. The total's gone up a little bit with more juice on the 6, so over maybe worth a look in that one. Tampa at Vegas, big game as well. A couple of these last games are actually pretty decent games. Tampa, they could be in kind of a hangover spot here because they had a 5-game win streak snapped in Colorado. Difficult opponent, and they had Vasilevsky in net for that one. Tampa did, their better goalie, and they lost the game by 1 goal. Ending a 5-game win streak, that could definitely carry over and linger into the next game, man. So I do worry about that. And they actually beat Vegas back on Sunday, October 26th. So it's going to be maybe a little bit of a quick revenge spot for Vegas, or a spot where Vegas will be, will refocus here. For Vegas, they're a bit more rested because they did play on Tuesday and they beat Detroit. That was a big win, but prior to that, they had a bunch of days off. They had been off since Friday prior to that, so they're a more rested team right now. And Tampa Bay is, they're in the middle of this road trip, which is also not good. Going, traveling within elevation here, now having to go to Vegas, I think is what they did. Let me see, am I right? Yeah. So they had the back-to-back elevation games with one day off in between them, and now they have to go to Vegas. Not an easy spot at all for Tampa. I think Vegas shows up for this one. I don't think it'll be totally a letdown after beating Detroit. This sets up a lot better for Vegas, in my opinion. But again, the money seems to be disagreeing with it. 71% of tickets, only 56% of the cash on Vegas here. Line up from -125 to -129. But I don't agree with that cash differential on that one, cash discrepancy on that one. I would play Vegas if I was going to play that one. I just hesitate a little bit, maybe because they're coming off that Detroit win, but we'll see. And I don't know what happened to Aiden Hill, man, because they've been alternating between Schmid and Lindblom in net. So Hill might be hurt. Although, again, ESPN, like, you got to look at, like, Roto World or something, or Roto Wire, because, oh, there it is. It does say that. Hill has an injury. I mean, obviously, because he's been their better goalie for a while. So Hill is out. So that's one kind of issue with Vegas, is they are going to be without they're already without their best goalie, though. They've been without him for a while now. And then the last game on the board is Florida, or the last game on the schedule, at least. It is the last game on the board as well. Florida is at LA. Florida just got blown out by Anaheim 7-3, so could be a little bit of a bounce back spot. They were coming off beating Dallas, although they weren't able to get revenge against Anaheim, but beating Dallas, always big. Coming off a bad loss like that, maybe they'll bounce back. They did actually have Bobrovsky in net for that one. He is the better goalie, but he wasn't in that one. But that Anaheim team has been putting up a lot of offense, man. Florida, now they have a day off. They travel just up the road, basically, to LA for this one. LA, they just beat Winnipeg in a shutout at home, so you could argue that LA is in a little bit of a letdown spot maybe after that. That's a big win. Winnipeg in their conference, in the Western Conference, and they shut them out, and Winnipeg was, I believe, the President's Trophy winner last year, too, had the best record in the regular season, so that was a big win for LA. But they're not really going to overlook Florida, I don't think, because Florida's the returning champs. That Winnipeg game was revenge, by the way, for a loss earlier in the season for LA against Winnipeg as well. So, yeah, some interesting angles here. LA moved up from -105 to -116 on the money line. Money kind of coming back in on the Florida side, though. 70% of tickets, 96% of the cash coming in on Florida. And I don't disagree with that. I would probably lean to Florida to bounce back from that hideous loss to Anaheim. So that's the way that I would lean. We're already considered to be in the best bet segment, but this is the last bet that I'm actually going to have, because all we have left is one NBA game, 2 college football games, and an NFL game, and I don't like any of them. But I shouldn't be doing this, man, because this team has burned me more often than most. Although I do remember they beat the Bruins, and I got a win on that one at one point last year. We're going to go with the Nashville Sex Offenders here again. The Nashville Predators, terrible team name. This is definitely a fade of the public, man. The public likes the Flyers, and the Flyers are an underdog here, and you got to kind of ask why. Like, why is that the case? Although I know I was asking that all last year, like, why is Nashville favored? And Nashville kept losing over and over again. So Nashville was just a team that I could not get a grasp on. Like, the odds makers just seemed to have them mispriced all year last year. Maybe that's not the case this year, but this is a spot where I think you want to fade Philadelphia. The public is all over Philly. 85% of tickets, only 63% of the cash on them. So I don't think the market read on this one is going to change. It looks like Philadelphia is going to remain public with less of the money coming in on them. I like the spot to fade them here. Nashville, I mean, again, it looks odd that Nashville is a favorite here because they're below 500. Philadelphia is above 500, but at least Nashville, not as bad at home, really. 4-3-2 at home. They play a lot of close games at the very least, although that's better if you're playing them as an underdog, if they're keeping all those games close. This one, you need them to win as a moneyline favorite. Philadelphia's only won once on the road, though, all season, so Philadelphia hasn't exactly been great on the road. They actually haven't played that many road games this year, so they're not really that battle-tested. Philadelphia, I think they're a little bit overrated right now. Part of the reason why is because they played so many home games. They just won at Montreal on Tuesday, and that was their first road game since October 23rd, and it was only their fourth road game of the season. So, yeah, they've played 5 games on the road. My mistake, but still, they're not road tested right now. And I think they're going to be in a letdown spot coming off that big win over Montreal. They did have Vladar in net for that one, so they might switch off of Vladar in this one, although he has been Maybe they will use him because he has had stretches where he's played a couple games in a row, so I don't know. Or they might rest him because that Montreal game was huge. They beat Montreal in a shootout. I gave up Philadelphia as a play in that game, and they actually blew a 3-0 lead and wound up still winning that game. That game was a bad spot for Montreal. So I think you can kind of explain why Philly won that game. Montreal had gotten that big win over Ottawa, and they had New Jersey to look ahead to. So I think they overlooked Philadelphia. So maybe that win isn't as good as it looked for Philadelphia. Now they got to go down to Nashville. Then they're going to return home and play Ottawa, which I think is going to be a bigger game. And it's a little bit of revenge because they just lost at Ottawa in a game where I think I gave out Philly in that game and took a loss on that one. Maybe I didn't, but I forget. But it is going to be a revenge game for Philly against Ottawa that next time. And they get Edmonton after that. So they might be looking ahead to those games. And they also might overlook Nashville because this is actually a revenge game for Nashville because Philadelphia just beat Nashville back on October 30th, 4-1 at home. So they might just not take Nashville seriously. The line was about where I think it should have been. Philly was minus 155 at home in that one, which does basically line up somewhat with Nashville being minus 120 here. And maybe it should be closer to about minus 110. I think you give the home team minus 120, but because the books have to basically juice everything, the extra 10 cents, I think basically minus 130 would be the home favorite there. So the odds in this game are telling you that Philly is still the slightly better team. So I think that's about in line with that. In this game, Philly did have an empty net goal in the game. Nashville actually, I don't want to say they dominated the game, but they outshot Philly 33-18 in this game. Hits were even, and Nashville outfaced off Philly in the game. So this final score was not what it looked like. And yes, you could argue Nashville was throwing up some desperation shots because they were losing, but they were losing by 1 going into the third period. So it wasn't like they were getting blown out by enough that they would have gone into desperation mode. So I actually think that game is a little bit misleading as well. So I think Philly might actually overlook Nashville a little bit here. And Nashville, I know they've been on a bad stretch. They've lost 5 of their last 6 games with their only win coming against Calgary. Calgary's bad. I get it. They're playing a third game in 4 days. It's not great, but they did just take 1 trip to Minnesota, and now they're back home. I think they're going to show up for it because, again, Philly did kind of embarrass them in that game the last time. Yes, I know they have Dallas up next with this Nashville team. I don't think they're really going to overlook anybody right now after losing 2 games in a row. They should have Saros back in net for this one, so they'll have their better goalie rested for this one because Noonan played in their last game. So I think Saros will be back in net for this one. So I think Nashville has the better goalie in this game because Saros, even though Nashville continues to not be good, Saros is still a solid goalie. And I don't really like any of Philly's goalies, and we'll see if it's Vladar or not, but whatever. I like Nashville in this one. Money seems to agree with it. You never bet overs. I think that's I think you're taking money off the table by never betting overs because there are definitely situations where you want to play an over. Hockey, I mean, so many of these games go over just with empty net goals alone. So it's like I almost never want to play an under in hockey, although I know that would be kind of leaving money on the table too. But yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely spots where you want to play overs. I mean, yes, overs tend to be the more public type of total, but especially in a sport like hockey where the public's just not really getting involved that much and the line can only be skewed so much on a hockey over. Like hockey totals like basically have to be between 5 and 6.5. Like the odds makers can't really do anything about it because that's just the name of the game. They can't really skew the line too heavily one way or the other because it's just a game where, you know, goals are at a premium. But yeah, I mean, I find spots to play overs in hockey. Yeah, I mean, I was doing it last year. And, of course, I play overs in baseball. Though I'm sure that I play more unders than overs in baseball because that's the name of it. Like, again, public plays overs more than they play unders. Same reason why you want to play underdogs because the public plays favorites more than they play underdogs. But you saw how many favorites I have today. So, like, you know, I mean, I'm not playing only underdogs by any stretch, obviously. I'm also going to disagree with the over in the Thursday Night Football as well. I like the under in the Thursday Night Football game. If you're talking about the NFL game. NBA, there's only one game. I don't really have a good read on this game. It's the Clippers at the Suns. You look at this line and you're going to think it's very, very odd because the Suns are not very good. All of a sudden, the Suns which looked like they should be a 5.5-point underdog here. All of a sudden, they're a 2.5-point favorite headed towards 3. And right now, it looks like the money's coming in on them. 81% of tickets, 93% of the cash coming in on the Suns. I don't know about that cash percentage, but the reason why the line moved that much, it's pretty obvious. It's got to mean that the Clippers have some injuries here. And yeah, that is the case. They actually have their two best players are not playing in this game. James Harden is out for personal reasons, whatever that means, don't know, but he's not playing. And Kawhi Leonard, who I think Leonard actually didn't even play in their previous game either. He's out with a knee injury or an ankle injury. I think he's old, so sometimes they'll rest him anyway. But so both those guys are going to be out for this game, so that's why the line has moved like that. Harden and Leonard both out. Harden, I believe, did play in their last game, so you could argue that this is an injured player spot now for the Clippers, although it's a personal outage for Harden here. But same thing, I think, kind of applies, where if the team knows, oh, well, Harden is our best player, our best scorer, or whatever, he's not in this game, we have to step up our level of play because he's out. So you could see that coming from the Clippers here, but I would have some reservations about that too, because, I mean, that is one angle here, but the Clippers are also bad on the road. They're 0-2 on the road. Suns are actually pretty good at home so far, 3-1 at home, so that kind of would give me a little bit of pause here. Clippers played against Oklahoma City 2 days ago. Big game, although they did get blown out by 19. Harden did play in that game. I believe Leonard did not. Clippers coming off that game, you could argue maybe they'd be in a bounce back mode. It might be good to just get away from home just because they took their first home, or no, that was their second home loss. What am I saying? Second home loss. But good to just get out of there when things aren't going well at home. Sometimes you go out on the road, it like takes the distractions away, and sometimes you're more focused. So maybe they will be here. Phoenix coming off a loss to Golden State on Tuesday, where they actually went to Golden State. They lost by double digits. Now they're coming back home from that. I mean, to me, the spot and the value looks a little bit better for the Clippers to me, though. So I don't know. I think that probably outweighs the road versus home records here. I would probably take the points with the Clippers in this one. And it looks like the Suns are going to be a little bit public in this one, too, which I don't love, obviously. But, of course, we know the Clippers are going to be shorthanded here. But, again, first game without Harden, maybe they'll step up their game a little bit. I think the spot actually sets up a little bit better for them. I don't really consider it to be a return home spot for the Suns because they only had a one-game road trip, but it was a big game against Golden State, so I think it's Clippers or pass in that game for me. A rookie scored 30 for the Warriors. Who was it? I don't even know. And I just took it down, but hold on. Not that I want this game to keep going. Where are the Warriors? Let's see. We're going to be about an hour and a half on this video today, probably. The Warriors last night, against Sacramento. This guy, Richard. Who is it? Oh, Will Richard. Yeah, out of Florida. Yeah, I remember him. Yeah. Good game from him last night, I guess. Yeah. Or Will Richard, maybe is how you pronounce his name. All right, college football, we have two. We're stepping it up. No more MACtion for the week. The rest of the MAC teams are playing on Saturday. We're stepping up in class a little bit. Now we get some, what are these? A Sun Belt game, I think, in the first one, and then an American game in the second one. I have some slight opinions on these games, but not very strong. First game, the Sun Belt game at 7:30 p.m. on ESPN2 is Georgia Southern and App State here. Don't think either of these teams are going anywhere. They're both 1-3 in the conference, so if they had hopes of maybe making the Sun Belt championship game or anything like that, that's not going to happen. So they're playing out the stretch here. What these teams potentially have left to play for is bowl eligibility, which you have to get to 6 wins to do that. It's going to be real difficult for Georgia Southern to do that, though, if they don't get this win here against App State at the very least. They should probably be a favorite, I think, against Coastal Carolina in the next game because they're not good. But then beating Old Dominion and Marshall is going to be pretty difficult to do. Marshall on the road, too, so I don't know, but they'll probably continue to at least try. Both of these teams, I think, played last Saturday, although I'll check that in a minute, the 25th. So a little bit of extra time off, I think, for both teams. Georgia Southern lost at Arkansas State last time up, but they did have a big kind of rivalry win over Georgia State the week before that, so they were in potentially a little bit of a letdown spot. Maybe they will show up for this game. Georgia Southern, not a very good team, though. They're definitely going to be an underdog in this one. App State, has been a pretty good team in this conference lately, but last year with the hurricane coming into their town and whatever kind of derailed them, and they haven't been that good this year. They haven't played since last Saturday as well, and they're coming off 2 straight losses, so maybe that extra time off will help them a little bit. They actually got their starting quarterback back in that game. It looks like Swan, who was their starter at the beginning of the game, unless, I don't know if he got hurt or if they switched to Cole because Swan wasn't doing well. I'm not sure. But Swan played in their last game against Old Dominion, and they actually almost won the game. That was a big performance from App State, man. Old Dominion, one of the better teams in this conference. Old Dominion did outgain them by close to 100 yards in the game, though. So the final score was closer than the statistics tell you the game actually really was. Old Dominion was a 12.5 point favorite, though, and App State played them to within 3, although I think they were losing by 10 late in the game. And App State did score a touchdown, I think, with like a minute and a half to go in that game. So they didn't like realistically have a chance to win that game, really. Because I think they would have basically had to recover an onside kick, but they still played them to within 3. And I think Old Dominion was probably in a bad spot in that game because I know they had a big game against JMU recently. Yeah, Old Dominion was coming off getting smacked by JMU, and they just, I think, probably were hungover from that. It was kind of a reality check game or a huge game on their schedule, and they fell way short. So I think maybe you could explain why App State came close to them in that game. Probably not as good as they looked there. Even with extra time off, I think maybe it could be a little bit of a hangover spot for App State. And they do have James Madison next. That's a big game for them. And when App State may not be going anywhere, although they're going to try to get into a bowl this year, which I think they might have, I don't remember if they made a bowl last year or not. I don't know if they played enough games. Maybe they did, because I know they had at least one game canceled because of the hurricane, but whatever. I mean, I think they do still want bowl eligibility here. But I would lean towards taking the points in this one, and the money seems to agree with it. I think you could argue that it's a little bit of almost of a sandwich spot for App State between those 2 good Virginia schools, Old Dominion and James Madison. App State's down from 6.5 to 5 here. 59% of tickets on them. 64% of the cash coming in on Georgia Southern. I would agree with it. I would take the points with Georgia Southern if I was going to do it, although they are not a very good team. So we'll see what they can do, but I just think the spot kind of sets up as a fade of App State. Don't want to give it out as a play. If you're taking the points, maybe a little bit worrisome that the total is really high, but it's gone down a little bit. The other total in the other game is actually higher. The money seems to be coming in somewhat on the under in both games, actually. This one down to 61.5 on the total. I don't really see an angle on the total here on this one, although, again, I'm not really a totals guy, so what do I know? The second game, probably the better game, although it looks like at least you're going to get some high-scoring games tonight, so entertainment value at the very least. UTSA in South Florida, the total's actually at 68, so it's expected to be a very high-scoring game. A lot of it is because South Florida has a really prolific offense, not as much so on the defensive side, but I think if you like UTSA plus the points in this one, they're going to have to slow the game down somehow. And they are equipped to do that because they can run the football. As we saw last week, they pulled off that big win for us as an underdog against Tulane in that primetime game. UTSA, I worry about them on the road, though, a little bit because they are better at home in the Alamo Dome. But they do have a really, really good rushing attack. And against South Florida, if you want to try to limit the amount of possessions that South Florida is going to have, the way that you might be able to do that is to try to slow the game down a little bit and run the football. And UTSA definitely does that. So they are able to do that well. But they're not as good on the road, though. They've lost three of their 4 losses came on the road. One was to Texas A&M, so you can't blame them for that. But they did lose to Temple on the road. Temple's not horrible, though, and they did get absolutely blown out by North Texas on the road, although we know North Texas is a very good offense. UTSA did bounce back last week for us, a good win for us on the show against Tulane. That's really what would worry me, though. So they played last Thursday, so they have exactly a week, so they're on schedule here. McCown actually had his best game of the year. I believe he's the son of one of the McCowns, Owen McCown. He's which McCown's son is he? I don't remember. There was Josh McCown, and then who was the other one? I don't even remember. He's one of their sons. I don't know. I feel like Owen McCown has been on this team for a long time. So he's probably going to be graduating at some point soon. But UTSA, I mean, I worry a little bit about it being a little bit of a letdown because that was a big win over Tulane. They're still going to be fighting for bowl eligibility here because they do have a realistic shot at getting a bowl, of course, which, I mean, they've been in bowls the last few years anyway, so I don't know how big of a deal that is, but that is one of their goals on the season. I'm assuming is to get back into a bowl. They'll probably be pumped up because they get to play another primetime game here. South Florida is probably more used to playing the primetime games, as they actually have already had 2 Friday games, one of which they hosted. One was a huge road win for them against North Texas, and the other was, of course, we all remember they had a Thursday primetime game where they beat Boise State in the opener. So maybe you could argue UTSA is a little bit more pumped up for these primetime games just because they don't get to do it as often. South Florida is a more highly touted team here. I don't like the spot for South Florida, though, because South Florida was on this huge roll after they crushed North Texas in that big game where everybody was hyping that matchup up because North Texas is actually really good as well. South Florida annihilated them. South Florida didn't suffer a letdown after that somehow, and they annihilated Florida Atlantic after that too. But then they ran into it up against Memphis, man, and they actually lost the game to Memphis last week on the road. That's difficult because that was one of their biggest games of the season. I think both teams might have been ranked at that time, too. I'm not sure, though. It looks like it says Memphis wasn't ranked at the time. I think Memphis may have become ranked again after that. South Florida actually has a little bit of extra time off because they played on the Saturday. That Saturday when they played them. But even so, I think that might derail them, man. When you have 4 wins in a row like that, and you lose a huge game to Memphis in a close game, I don't actually love this for South Florida, man, because that was one of the games that's going to determine potentially the conference here. And up next, they got Navy, and Navy is one of the teams that's right at the top of the conference. Navy been really good. So I think South Florida is in a sandwich spot here. I think they might overlook UTSA here. One thing I will say is South Florida did play better in this Memphis game than it looked on the scoreboard. South Florida did lose 1 turnover. They did have more than 100 more yards than Memphis did. So the game was a little bit misleading. Memphis won that game. Coming off that game, I think Memphis is kind of in I thought they were in more of a spot to maybe potentially fade them, although they played Rice. I did not give that out as a play either, which was last week, I think, after that. And I think they wound up covering, so it's a good thing I didn't give that out as an actual play. It was a lean, though. But, yeah, overall, I think South Florida is in a sandwich spot, though. I mean, simply, Memphis and Navy are 2 of the teams that they're fighting with for this conference. That was their first conference loss that they took 2 against Memphis, so I think this could hang them over. I would take the points with UTSA if I was going to play this game, but it looks like the cash is slightly disagreeing. 51% of tickets on UTSA, 56% of the cash coming in South Florida. Don't know if that's going to shift as the day goes on. South Florida is a 13.5-point favorite right now. I would wait if you like Texas San Antonio because it might get to 14 with the way the cash looks right now. So obviously, if you want Texas San Antonio, you want to take them with extra points there if you can. 2 touchdowns is a big, is one of the key numbers. So lean to Texas San Antonio though for me. Kessler, I knew he was hurt. He's out for the season. That is bad for Utah, man. I believe he's one of their starters. Yeah, that's not good. That sucks. And I kind of like the Jazz. I kind of want to get a Jazz jersey. Tony Allen, what is he up to now? Former Boston Celtic and Oklahoma State Cowboy, Tony Allen. He was a good defensive player, dude, back in the day. A couple of good defensive guards that the Celtics had coming out of Oklahoma State. Tony Allen and Marcus Smart. I think he went to Oklahoma State too, right? Some of the days when Oklahoma State was a little bit better at basketball than they are right now. Tony Allen, but yeah, I mean, drug charge, probably a little bit of BS though. I mean, depending on, I mean, whatever it was. I mean, that's, yeah, the libertarian in me coming out, I guess. Yeah, you know, probably shouldn't be an arrestable offense, although people should not do drugs. NFL, we have Raiders, Broncos is the Thursday night game. Man, I mean, this game, It's not a very enticing game. I don't have a play on this game. The Raiders, I mean, they actually looked pretty decent last week in a loss, though, in overtime against Jacksonville. The Raiders, they tried to win the game right there with a 2-point conversion. I don't mind that call. I don't blame that. I don't blame Pete Carroll for that at all. I mean, the Raiders had gone into a bye after getting annihilated, embarrassed by Kansas City, shut out 31-0. So they came back with some fire out of the bye, and they played pretty well against Jacksonville. Again, it made sense to go for the 2-point conversion because, I mean, you're trying to win the game. You're not going anywhere this year. You're an underdog, Makes sense. Try to win the game. It failed, but whatever. Now, they do have to turn around on a short rest and go to Denver here. And I know Thursday night games do tend to favor the home team and the better team because they're better at that short prep time. And the home team is obviously used to playing at home. Although, with a divisional game, the home team has a little bit less of that advantage because, of course, a team like the Raiders, they do have to go to Denver every single year, so they're more used to it. So they should be a little bit less affected by that than maybe some road team that's unfamiliar with Denver. And Denver, I believe, having not played the Raiders yet, Denver, all they know as far as what to prepare for, they just know what the Raiders have done so far this year. So Denver might not know exactly what to prepare for just because they haven't seen this Pete Carroll, Geno Smith offense yet in person. Not that it's been a good offense, though, so maybe it doesn't matter that much, but I think that at least kind of negates Denver's edge that they might have otherwise with the short prep time. I don't think that's as much of an edge as it would be against, some other opponent. But Vegas did just look good in a loss, and Denver just looked pretty ugly in a win. So sometimes when a team looks really ugly in a win and they are the better team, the public is kind of off of them, and you do want to look towards that team in the next game. Whereas the opposite, with the Raiders looking good in a loss, sometimes you don't want to play on that team in the next game. But in this case, I'm not really so sure because the public is obviously on the Broncos. I mean, the public wants nothing to do with the Raiders. 74% of tickets on the Broncos, 69% of the cash. The line looks like it already dropped from 10.5 to 9. Maybe 10.5 was a look ahead. Although it wouldn't really make sense for the current number to actually be lower than the look ahead because, if anything changed last week, it was really the Broncos won and the Raiders lost. So why would the line move down for that reason? But it looks like some of the money is actually taking the Raiders plus the points. I don't mind it. I mean, I know last year Denver was actually really good at winning and covering as a favorite at home, but this year they haven't been as good. At home as a favorite, they did not cover against Tennessee. They did cover against Cincinnati, against Jake Browning, whatever. They were a big favorite against the Jets, but that was in a neutral site game, but they didn't cover. They didn't cover at home against the Giants, and they did cover at home against Dallas. So they're 2-2 against the spread at home, I guess, as a favorite, which I think has been all their home games. And then if you count them being a big favorite against the Jets, they're 2-3 against the spread in games where they've been around a big favorite. Well, against Dallas, they're only a 3-point favorite. So I guess they're still so that means they're even worse, actually. In games where they're around a touchdown favorite, or I guess a touchdown favorite or more, they're actually 1-3 against the spread, with the only spread win coming against Jake Browning's Cincinnati Bengals. So that's not a great sign. Recently, the Broncos have just not been covering large numbers. I think it's kind of the sophomore slump with Bo Nix. Man, I don't think he's as good as he looked last year. He's fine, but Denver is definitely relying on their defense. And I know they put up a bunch of points against Dallas and against the Giants, but those are not very good defenses. Houston was a better defense, obviously. I know the Raiders are not a good defense, but still, I don't think Denver's a very good offense. Denver is having to travel back from Houston, and Denver, I would argue they should have lost this game. I had Houston was one of my, I didn't give it out as a play, but Houston, I had it as a lean in the game. Statistically, the game was pretty close, but Houston lost C.J. Stroud in the game. I think that's why they lost. Houston was winning that game by 8 late in the game. I think they would have won the game if Stroud was still in the game. They got Davis Mills in there. I mean, he's serviceable-ish, I guess. He's played. He's been a backup, I think, for Houston before. He's been on the team for a couple of years now, but still, Stroud is better than he is, so a little bit of a misleading game there. Denver is having to turn around and return home as well in a short week, so both teams are actually traveling here. Denver, you could argue maybe it's a little bit of a look ahead to Kansas City next, man, because if they're going to overlook anybody in this division, even though it's a divisional game, I don't think they're going to be very concerned with the Raiders here right now. I mean, they're more concerned with the Chargers and the Chiefs, who are close behind them in the division here. So Chiefs up next could be a bit of a look ahead here. So, yeah, I think I'll agree with taking the points with the Raiders here. I don't want to make it a play, obviously, but I'll agree with it. I'll agree with the market and lean in that one. And then I do actually agree with an under in this one. I think on these short turnaround times, sometimes the under is better with the divisional games because the divisional teams, they know what to prepare for more, so they can better prepare something against these offenses. But, I mean, even though, yes, I said the Broncos might not be able to completely prepare for this Raider offense, the Raider offense is still not good, man. And they just traded away Jacoby Myers, which, by the way, that also worries me a little bit about the Raiders' mindset here. Like, they became sellers at the trade deadline. So, like, is that going to affect their mental state? I don't know, though, because if you're the Raiders and you're not really going anywhere this season, I think you're still going to get up for a Thursday night divisional game against the Broncos, though, would be my opinion. I think this will be one of the remaining games they still want to actually show up and try. Although the first game, since they traded one of their best receivers away, maybe their mental state won't be great. I mean, you can see why I'm not offering a play on this game. But Myers is gone. They traded him to, where the hell did he go? I don't even remember. One of the contenders got him. So he's gone. The Raiders did get Brock Bowers back, though, and he's one of the best tight ends in football, so he's back. They do have Genty, of course, at running back, but he's not looking very good, man, and I said that I didn't think he was worthy of that high draft pick. Genty, I know he was great in college, but in the Mountain West, he was facing a lot of weak defenses, and the NFL, some of these are not weak defenses. This is not UNLV this time. This is the Broncos. I mean, this is one of the best defenses in the NFL right now. So I think, I could see the Raiders struggling offensively here. And I just don't think the Broncos offense is that good. I mean, I know the Raiders defense is not great, so the Broncos should be able to move the ball a little bit. But I think one of the other reasons to look towards the under here and maybe to the Raiders plus the points is that kind of what I was alluding to. I just don't know how seriously the Broncos are going to take the Raiders here. And with the Chiefs up on deck, one of the things the Broncos might do here is just, they might look at this game as we just got to get in and get out of this game intact, basically. Like, get in, win the game, and when you're in a mentality like that, you tend to not put up as much offense. Maybe they don't want to show everything they might plan on showing against Kansas City either. Broncos are coming off a game where they faced a punishing defense too, so remember that in Houston, although again, that can affect their defense a little bit, but that's another reason to maybe lean to the Raiders here. But it could mean their offense might still be a little bit sluggish from that game because Houston is a very good defense, so for me, yeah, it would be Raiders plus the points and under in this game would be my leans in that one. As Mr. Thursday Night, yeah, I mean, I was only counting the sides as my real Thursday night opinions because I'm not really that much of a totals guy. So, yeah, I mean, we can count the Raiders plus the points probably as my opinion on the side here. I finally lost one of my side opinions last week. I dropped to 8-1 because the Ravens were able to win and cover against the Miami Dolphins. And statistically, that game was a lot closer than that, man. The Ravens were a little bit sluggish with their first game with Lamar Jackson back. They really didn't put up a ton of offense, but Miami just couldn't put the ball in the end zone, man. So that's what it was. Mike McDaniel, whatever his name is, he's going to get fired, man. It's just the way that it is. We'll talk about Miami when we get to the weekend games here, and I actually like Miami to cover this week, and it sounds really, really insane, but you know me, I'm insane when it comes to the NFL, so you kind of have a little bit of a gauge on what I'm thinking in the NFL this week. I'm trying to narrow it down because I have about 5 or 6 games that I like in the NFL, and I got to narrow it down to, like, usually I'm going to try to narrow it down to somewhere around, like, 3 plays is typically what I'm going to have, so we'll see what happens there. But that's going to do it. Once again, my plays. Long show today. Thanks, guys, for hanging out. My plays are going to be in college basketball, Long Island plus the 2.5, although that's a line that I only saw in pregame. I didn't see it at any of the books yet, so let me check real quick, and let me just see what the line looks like it is now in that game. if there is one. Although I still kind of like it if it's basically in the pick the winner. You can actually get them at plus 3.5. It looks like right now. So let's change it. We're going to update it. Plus 3.5 on Long Island. So I would do that one. And then we're going to do Miami minus 17.5. We got all these huge favorites in college basketball. Worked out last night, and hopefully these favorites come through. Rooting for blowouts, feeling like a public better here, but I don't think the public is heavily on these favorites here after seeing what they did in the first game. TCU minus the 25.5 and Auburn minus 25.5. And again, like there might be like a little bit, like the line might be a little bit higher than that now because we've seen these lines start going crazy like within the last hour. But these numbers aren't key in college basketball, so you're not losing too much value if you do that. Just make sure you try to get the better number. And then, unfortunately, the Nashville Predators are my hockey play today. Hopefully, we can get it done, man. Let's keep the winning going. It can't all be this good, though, man. I know 6-1 over the last 2 days, 3-0 yesterday. Can't really continue, but let's get it done again. Learn to Toad on Twitter. Learn to Toad on Instagram. Like, subscribe to the channel here. Give me good comments. Let's boost this channel. Keep it going. People should be taking notice, baby, because I've been so hot recently. Let's get it done. Let's get more viewers. I'm giving this shit out for free, and it's it's costing me my time. I should be putting my money on this again, like I said, like I used to. Every day that goes by, I'm like, shit. I'm like so good right now, man. I wish I put money on him. What else was I going to say? Oh, yeah, we're on audio. Give me a good review over there. Spotify, iTunes, that all helps out as well. Apple, whatever. Give me a 5-star review over there and listen over there, and that helps me out too. Covered in Uke is my Uke channel on YouTube, which I know I don't keep it as up to date as I should. I should be doing live request hours and stuff. My voice is just destroyed right now. I'll try to get around to it. We'll see. And then patreon.com, you can actually request stuff of me there, and I prioritize it. And at one of the lower levels, you get a Spotify feed with all the Uke stuff that I've been putting out for over the last, since whenever I started the Patreon a couple of months ago. So that's it for now. Thanks, guys. I'll be back tomorrow. And then, of course, tomorrow night we'll do a college football show as usual tomorrow night. And I might double it up with a college basketball Saturday show because that's the season that we're in now. There's almost always a big college basketball slate on Saturday, so I think I almost have to, unless I just spend all of a Saturday morning doing it, which I don't really want to because I have to get my picks in order for college football on Saturdays. So that's going to do it for now, though. Going to get some lunch in a little bit. Going to see if Taco Bell has released the Baja Blast Pie. Might be a Taco Bell lunch for me today. We'll see. Because I got to try that thing, man. I have no choice. I got to try it. That's going to do it. I appreciate it again, guys. Dirty Sock, Jeffrey, Pinsy. I think it was just you 3 guys this morning. Charles, if you're out there, because you're always in the chat for the most part. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging out. Let's get some wins tonight. Peace.